Tuning in. I am going to be giving you a preview of a certification program that we are doing on February 24th. It is Anxiety in the Classroom. It's a certification training. So again, February 24th, go to PESI.com/O'Brien for more information and hopefully to sign up and join us. Also know that this is a certification training, so that means that you will become an anxiety-informed professional after taking this training. So I've been doing PESI trainings for a good number of years, and I do a lot of them on anxiety, particularly enjoy them. This one is especially focused on helping teachers, educators, school staff manage anxiety in a classroom setting. So I thought I would give you a preview of some of the things I'm going to talk about. And the first one is a real kind of general overview technique that can be used for a lot of different types of anxiety. I find that this is helpful to teach to kids. This is helpful to teach to parents. And it is good for all of us as professionals to use this with our own anxiety as well. So it is called the 3 R's of anxiety management. So the first R refers to recognize, meaning it's really important that we help kids recognize what anxiety is and what it isn't. So, for example, I often talk to children about their brain and give them a little tour of their brain and help them understand how different areas of the brain are responsible for different sorts of things. And I'll say that there's a part of your brain that's called the protector. And of course, I'm talking about the amygdala. But it's good for kids, before you use the 3 R's, to help them know a little bit about their brain and that they have a part that protects them, but it can overprotect. Sometimes I will use an analogy to a smoke detector and say that smoke detectors do a really nice job of making sure that there's not a fire. But sometimes they go off just because someone blew out a candle or just because there's a little burnt toast in the toaster. So some people's smoke alarms go off when there's no smoke from a fire. And helping them understand that, then you might want to say, here's what you want to do with that first R. Recognize that that's just, my smoke detector's not working right? For older kids, we sometimes talk about how our brains have chemicals. And we could say they're healthy chemicals, but they can get a little too high. And when they do, we can start feeling yucky in our stomach. We can have a headache. We can have a pounding heart. We can get sweaty. And we can have terrible thoughts. We can think something bad's going to happen. We might even think that we're going to die. So helping them know that that is chemical. I like to use the phrase, it's chemical, not factual. So that first R again, help children recognize that anxiety is a smoke alarm that's going off when it doesn't need to be. Or it's a chemical sort of a thing in your brain, chemical, not factual, but it's very convincing. So it can make you think that that there's really something to be scared of. I will talk to kids and say, anxiety feels scary, but that doesn't mean it really is scary. I also don't like to talk about anxiety as like a bully or a monster. I'd rather talk about it as something that's annoying, right? It's a pesky bug or creature. So first R, recognize what anxiety is and what it is not. The second R is relax. Relax the body, relax the mind. And, children obviously have different learning styles. We know this, but they also can have different relaxation styles. So it's really good to understand, does this child relax better through breathing, which is something that we all should do, because we know from studies that extra oxygen going up here, hitting our frontal lobe, it does help the brain relax. So slow breaths in, of course, and easy breaths out. Smell the cookies that are baking and blow out a birthday candle, whatever kind of analogy you want to use. But make sure that they understand it's important to take slow breaths in and out. You can also help kids relax through, some kids might like to smell essential oils. Some kids might like something smooth to touch. Some kids might like a little bit of soft music. These are all things that, again, kind of correspond to how does this kid best relax. And so First R, recognize the anxiety. It's chemical, not factual. It's a smoke alarm going off that doesn't need to. Second R, relax the body and the mind with some relaxation techniques, some mindfulness techniques that we'll be going over as well on the 24th. And then that third R is redirect. And by redirection, what we're really talking about is taking any remaining anxiety kind of energy and redirecting ourselves into either something that's productive or something that's distracting. So, for example, if a kid is really, really worried about an upcoming test and they think they're going to fail, so right away we've got recognize that thought, because again, those chemicals can also make us think things that aren't true. That's your anxiety making you think you're going to fail. I also sometimes like to reframe worries as values and say something like, that's just your brain's way of showing you that you really care about doing well on the test. So again, it's recognize that's anxiety, relax with some breaths, maybe something nice to touch, maybe something to squeeze and release the tension. Then that third R, take that energy and redirect it into either a productive task like, let's come up with a little study schedule for the next couple days. Now, often that won't be possible because either it might be a worry that you can't do that with, like something kind of irrational, just afraid the sky is going to fall. But sometimes it's also not practical because maybe they already have studied enough, but they think they haven't. So in those cases, the redirection goes toward pleasant distraction. It's like time to play a game. It's time to go outside and play on the swings. So that is a way to really get them to move away from it. Because what we have to be careful about when we're helping kids with anxiety is not get sucked into the content very much. We do know now that talking too much about the content of a kid's anxiety can actually strengthen it. It's much better to talk about the anxiety itself rather than what the kid is worried about. That you just talk about very briefly. I understand you care about your tests, you're worried about it, but that's because you care. But it's not going to help to start going on and on about how they're going to do well and they don't need to worry about it and they've taken this kind of test before. None of that really helps. We like to think it does, but it doesn't. I like to sometimes say that you can't reason with the cortex when the amygdala is on fire. So instead, it's much better to just say, that's anxiety, okay? Recognize that. Let's now relax the brain and body with some techniques that we just discussed, for example. Now let's redirect into a productive activity that may address some of the worry, for example, or a pleasant distraction. Kids with anxiety tend to need more mental food. They often need more to think about. So sometimes it also helps to redirect them into like, hey, you know what? Tonight we're going to go out for grandma's birthday. Let's think about what kind of restaurant we should go to. What kind of food do you think she might like? Or you've got a birthday party to go to, in a couple days. We need to think about getting a gift for your friend. What do you think that he or she would like? So again, redirection can also be mental like that. So let's go on and talk about something else that we're going to talk about on February 24th. Again, there's a training February 24th, Anxiety in the Classroom, a certification training, PESI.com/O'Brien for more information to sign up as well. And you will become a certified anxiety-informed professional should you take the course, and I certainly hope you will. It's also important to note that this is a free of charge course, by the way, too, which is really cool. All right, so let's continue by talking about something else I'd like to particularly have teachers be aware of, which is what I call reframing the 3 Ds. I guess I like things in threes. So it's kind of like easy to remember, 1, 2, 3. But the 3 Ds can be very mistakenly interpreted by people. And they're common words that you've heard many times. The 3 Ds of misbehavior I refer to as 1, disruptive behavior, 2, defiant behavior, and 3, disrespectful behavior. So these are very common terms, very common descriptors. And the problem with them is that they're very negative. And because they are very negative, they tend to reinforce a negative view of the child. But if this is a child with anxiety, it is very likely that these adjectives are really describing a form of anxiety. So, for example, kids that are very disruptive often have a lot of anxiety that makes them restless, right? So they're like motorically restless. So because of that, they have this extra energy and they're not sure what to do with it. And for those kids, it can really be helpful to provide more movement breaks. Have this kid get up and help the teacher pass something out, for example, and then return. Uh, this is the kind of kid that might need to be able to have a standing desk or to have a couple fidget items, not noisy ones, that can help with some of that restlessness. The second D, defiant behavior, which is never fun. We need to keep in mind that that kind of behavior is often due to a need for control. Remember that kids with anxiety, many of them feel out of control and they want to feel like they have some control. So obviously a defiant kid can't give enough control to run the classroom, but we can probably increase their decision making or their option in some way. So thinking about how can we help this kid decide, do they want to do read this first, or do they want to write this task first? Do they want to help with this task in the classroom, or they want to help with that task in the classroom? Do they have a preference for what kind of game we might play today on a break? So for example, if you can give these kids a way to feel like you have input, they are much less likely to be as defiant. And so it's really important that when you do this too, you have to kind of assume that some benevolence, meaning if we personalize kids' behavior in the classroom, we're going to get much more upset, which is what often happens, particularly with this third term, disrespectful. We tend to think of kids not being cooperative, not following directives as, again, not just defiant, but often disrespectful, especially if they say something that we would consider, rude. But what we have to keep in mind is disrespectful behavior that's anxiety-based is often a form of significant frustration. And that may take the form of eye rolling. It may take the form of, yeah, right. And it's very easy to get upset, right? It's not that those are pleasant things we want to hear from a kid. But if we see it as disrespectful, we're going to personalize it. We're going to come back in an authoritarian manner. An authoritarian approach is where we're just, that's it. It's what we say and do, and no options, and I don't want to hear about it. That kind of shutdown or attempting to shut them down doesn't work very well, right? So either they come back at you, and now we have this power struggle going on, or they may comply, but there's going to be something that they do later to kind of now they're kind of resentful. So this tends to bypass that. So again, the 3 Ds of misbehavior that are disruptiveness, defiance, and disrespectfulness. They can be thought of differently. Reframe disruptiveness as restlessness, reframe defiance as a need for control, and reframe disrespect as frustration. And if you can do that, provide movement breaks for disruptive kids, provide more options for kids that are defiant, and disrespectful kids really need outlets for this frustration. They may need some validation as well. They might need just some comment like, I know this is hard, or I know this is irritating or annoying. But helping them then take a couple breaths can really help. Validation can go a long way with those kind of kids. They feel understood. Sometimes we may be able to give them an alternative, like, I know you really want to do this today, but we do have it on the calendar to do tomorrow. For now, take a couple breaths. I know it's frustrating, and we're going to do something else today, and we're going to do what you'd like tomorrow. So those kinds of approaches hopefully do help the classroom interactions between teachers and kids be better. And that's important too, because we have research that shows that when kids feel good about their connection with their teacher, when they feel, in other words, that their teacher regards them well. And that doesn't mean a teacher never, consequence them. Of course, limits and consequences are absolutely necessary. But the teachers that connect well with the kids and help the kids feel regarded tend to be kids that are more cooperative over time. And they also tend to do better both emotionally and academically in the classroom. All right, so I would like to wrap up with one other point, and this one is kind of, I have to admit, a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. I really encourage teachers to rethink behavioral systems. You know, those systems that are about, you're on red, you're on blue, your card is moved up or down. You know, we have become, I believe, a bit of a hyper evaluative society. We evaluate everything, right? It's like you leave the grocery store and it's like, how was your experience at the, Publix or Whole Foods or wherever? And it's like, it was good. I got my food, So sometimes we're doing that with kids, I find too much. So for example, when we use a formalized feedback system every day, you know, what that can sometimes do for kids with anxiety is make them feel like they're in a minefield, because at any point, now I'm not doing well. It's kind of would be akin to us as adults having our employer tell us that you were doing really well today at work, but you made that comment in staff meeting, and so I'm demoting you and I'm telling everybody. That would be awful, right? Well, it's kids are self-conscious too. So what I propose as an alternative is to help teachers give more informal feedback to kids. Like, I'm noticing that you're moving around a lot today. What do you think would help you focus? Rather than all of a sudden, boom, penalize them. Now you're on this level and this gets reported to a parent. The other problem with daily reporting to parents like that is that it's kind of like checking the stock market every day. It's not really a good idea. You want to look for trends in children's behavior. So you look at, how do they do over the week? How do they do over 2 weeks? How do they do over the past 2 to 3 to 4 weeks? And I'm much more comfortable giving more formalized feedback in longer intervals. But daily feedback can be given much less informally in a one-on-one basis without an audience, so the kid is less self-conscious, or at least in a more subtle way, so that so much doesn't ride on how did they do that day with that particular feedback descriptor that sometimes ends up giving them more consequences at home from a not very happy parent. So it's softening the system, kind of elongating it, making it more informal along the way, and using the more formal labels, descriptors, progress reports, if you will, every week or 2 or 3 rather than every day. Because again, we don't want to do things that are out of line with child development. Child development is not a perfect linear progress, as we know. So I hope that you will join us on February 24th, Anxiety in the Classroom Certification Training. This is a free training, time-saving strategies for challenging classroom issues. Take the course and become an anxiety-informed professional. PESI.com/O'Brien is where you go to get info and to sign up. I am Steve O'Brien, and I really hope that I will I know it's a webinar, so I'll say see all of you there. Have a good rest of your day.